When I was on the island last week, I appointed Bob Fenton, one of the nation's leading emergency managers, who's been on the ground in Hawaii since before the fires erupted, as our Chief Federal Response Coordinator, to lead our long-term recovery on Maui, who's been on the ground in Hawaii since before the fires erupted,
They were gathered in Waikiki for an annual FEMA disaster meeting. That same day, several of the country's top emergency management officials were in Hawaii hosting an annual conference. The agenda listed 74 attendees at this year's Pacific Partnership meeting, including FEMA leadership and several members of the Center for Homeland Defense and Security.
I've been here since the fires occurred and will continue to be here as long as support is needed from FEMA.
H&N Investigates confirmed the head of Maui County's Emergency Management Agency, Herman Ndaya, was also on hand, along with as many as 6 leaders from the state's Emergency Management Office, including Director Major General Kenneth Hara, Administrator James Barros, and Executive Officer Don Aveao.
Do you regret not sounding the sirens?
I do not. I appointed Bob Fenton, one of the nation's leading emergency managers, who's been on the ground in Hawaii since before the fires erupted.
I've been here since the fires occurred.
Who's been on the ground in Hawaii since before the fires erupted.
And will continue to be here as long as support is needed from FEMA. I'm the Chief Federal Response Coordinator, and my job is to really support the state and local government here. So I'm not in the lead. I'm here to support them, and I do that by bringing multiple federal agencies in here to do that. And there's really 3 lines of effort that we're heavily focused in right now. The first one, as you heard, is we're just finishing, which was the search and rescue. We had teams start here on August 11th, over 400 search and rescue specialists from FEMA, 40 dogs deployed here. I participated this Saturday in a transition of all the data and all the information search from our teams to the police chief and his teams.
Ndaya's whereabouts the night the blazes broke out have also been unclear until now. H&N Investigates reporter Allison Blair uncovered exclusive details.
It's a simple question both state and county officials have been dodging for the past week. Where was Herman Ndaya? After a week of being noticeably absent from all press conferences, the head of Maui County's Emergency Management Agency addressed the media for the first time Tuesday. During the question and answer period, he said this brief statement about his whereabouts the night Lahaina burned.
I was not there that night. I was in Oahu attending a conference.
According to documents obtained by H&N Investigates, Ndaya was in Waikiki at the Alohalani Resort attending what was scheduled to be a 3-day FEMA disaster preparedness seminar called the Pacific Partnership Meeting. A receipt from the hotel shows Ndaya checked in last Monday, a day before the fire started. That same receipt lists a departure date of Wednesday, August 9th, the morning after flames reduced Lahaina town to ash. What we're still trying to confirm is exactly what time Ndaya left Oahu and returned to Maui, along with details about how much the administrator knew during the early stages of disaster response. We were unable to get those answers. According to the Pacific Partnership agenda, the FEMA conference began Tuesday morning at 7:30 a.m. after fires in Kula and Lahaina sparked. Officials from other counties confirmed the seminar went on as scheduled that day. According to Tuesday's agenda, the day wrapped up with a networking reception at the hotel's Longboard Club from 5 to 7 that evening. At the same time, people were running for their lives, trying to escape flames that engulfed the town. Right now, we're still trying to confirm if Ndaya attended the conference alone or if other emergency officials from his office were with him. We're also trying to track down who was there from the state's emergency management office. Last night, I submitted a public information request to FEMA asking for a complete list of attendees. I also sent that same request to Maui County and the state emergency management office. I have yet to get a response from anyone. Allison Blair, Hawaii News Now.
Thank you, Allie. Well, on this first day that
Those in attendance were quite literally the who's who of disaster response, both locally and from across the Pacific region. They were gathered in Waikiki for an annual FEMA disaster meeting. That same day, several of the country's top emergency management officials were in Hawaii hosting an annual conference. The agenda listed 74 attendees at this year's Pacific Partnership meeting, including FEMA leadership and several members of the Center for Homeland Defense and Security. H&N Investigates confirmed the head of Maui County's Emergency Management Agency, Herman Ndaya, was also on hand, along with as many as 6 leaders from the state's Emergency Management Office, including Director Major General Kenneth Hora, Administrator James Barros, and Executive Officer Don Aveao. In an email, a state emergency management spokesperson said those officials were part of a coordinating call about 11 a.m. to discuss multiple wildfires that had sparked on Big Island and Maui. That spokesperson went on to say HIEMA personnel attending the meeting were updated on developments throughout the day. FEMA confirmed the fires were indeed part of discussions during the conference.
There were consultations about the fires among local, state, and FEMA participants.
We asked both Maui County and the state who was left in charge while those local emergency officials attended the meeting and at what time they were made aware of the catastrophe unfolding in Lahaina. Despite multiple requests, those questions remain unanswered. Meanwhile, many who experienced the horror of that day firsthand say government failed them by not sounding the emergency sirens.
It's inexcusable, really. It's inexcusable. A lot of people probably could have gotten out.
I understand that there was a bit of a break in communication between the county and the field. From what I understand, I'm not sure. When did it become apparent that people were in imminent danger for their lives?
So the question is around what you are hearing is a disconnect between the county and the field, and when did it become apparent that something was truly going on? Mahalo.
So the Emergency Operations Center was in full activation that night. And we had in our EOC representation from the fire department. And so they were in constant communications with the field. And so I'm not sure where that comes from, but I can tell you that we did have communication with the field at that point.
Okay, and when did you find out that people were in imminent danger? At what point? Was it immediately?
It was immediately. It was. So I was not there that night. I was in Oahu attending a conference. But what I was told by my staff that they received from the battalion chief that was in the EOC that their crews are being overrun, and so at that point we sent out the evacuation notices.
When I was on the island last week, I appointed Bob Fenton, one of the nation's leading emergency managers, who's been on the ground in Hawaii since before the fires erupted.
Federal partners are providing continued assistance. As the coroner was just speaking, we're providing disaster mortuary teams from HHS. We're providing Department of Defense forensic anthropologists to the coroner's office, and many other subject matter experts as they need to continue to work on this area. As the police chief said, the FBI is involved with the investigation part of this, and we will continue to have those individuals support Maui until the job is done. While the urban search and rescue part of the mission is over, the critical comprehensive process of identification will continue, as you've heard. With the federal search and rescue complete, federal teams now turn to removing hazardous materials from the impacted area. The Environmental Protection Agency completed nearly all the hazardous material removal in upcountry yesterday and is now starting Lahaina. Teams are removing fuels, solvents, cleaners, paints, other household materials. The EPA will be supported also by the Corps of Engineers, especially in removing asbestos or other threats. The key is to make that area safe, and EPA will speak in much more detail about the hazards there here in a little bit, and they're extensive. Also, we're working to bring in teams to look at the structures. One of the things our search and rescue teams had were engineers on the team that identified many of the walls are very unsafe. Over 2,000 degree temperatures in there. The metals in a lot of the prefab walls have melted and are very dangerous. So we need to go ahead and look at the safety of those structures. And as you heard the county talk about, once that is done and that area is deemed safe, then we could start with re-entry. And the county's working aggressively toward a re-entry plan that will be phased in, that we will support and ensure that the safety area is accomplished through removing those hazmats and hazardous materials, identifying those structures. Once that's done, and I might add, once that's done, we will then work with the Corps of Engineers, and we will look at debris removal in that area and removing the debris from that area. And then lastly, I just wanted to say, I think what everyone before me has said, that from the start, we have partnered with the trusted local community leaders and faith-based organizations who know the history and culture of Maui. It is through their guidance that we will be able to address the challenges on the ground and connect that with survivors in a way that resonates. This guidance informs how we will deliver help to individuals, how we are removing hazardous materials, how we will monitor closely for cultural and other sensitivities during the debris removal work. And it ensures that we will work together collectively with everyone here.
So Fenton was able to give a press conference a day and a half after the fire from Hawaii because he was already pre-placed in Hawaii. What are the odds?
Right now, we are mobilizing the federal force. As you heard from General Hara, there's been many federal agencies already involved. Department of Defense, U.S. Coast Guard have been involved in the immediate response to this event already. But there'll be many other federal agencies that started moving this way today or on island already. And we're starting to work on the recovery, the things that we'll do immediately post-event, like looking at do they need help with debris removal? Do they need other types of assistance from us?
So why was Robert Fenton in Hawaii when this fire happened? And why, if what Biden is saying is true and not hyperbole, did Fenton screw up the response so badly? Maybe that was his job.
When I was on the island last week, I appointed Bob Fenton, one of the nation's leading emergency managers. And I mean that, that's not hyperbole.
From the moment the fire started, the government has been worse than negligent. Yet somehow Bob Fenton was at the scene of the crime. One of the key personnel in this conference that was preoccupying the very people who were supposed to protect the citizens of Lahaina. So it only takes just a little bit of digging into Bob Fenton, and we see that he's practically the Forrest Gump of FEMA. Here he is 1 year ago, September 2022, addressing the White House press corps in his role as monkeypox coordinator.
And when it comes to the funding and resources that you guys have available at this point, how long will it be before those go out and you have to get more from Congress?
Well, we're working right now with Congress on the supplemental as part of the CR to identify additional funding needed both in vaccine supply to not only replenish what has been used out of the stockpile, which is critical if there was another event for our security of the nation, but also to provide additional vaccine and have it more available if needed during this event. Also, there's a number of other things that we're pursuing, including technology with testing, research, to continue to watch this event and study as it progresses, to include other types of looking at the treatments that are being provided and those kind of things. So we have enough money right now to make the key decisions we need to make. But as this progresses, we need to replenish what we've used and be able to have additional funding to keep the fight going.
How much longer will you have this funding before you have to ask for more?
Well, we're asking for more right now.
And this was when the news was breaking. August the 2nd, 2022, the Washington Post. White House names FEMA's Fenton as monkeypox coordinator. Fenton, the FEMA Forrest Gump. Here's a statement that Robert Fenton filed on behalf of FEMA to Congress's Committee on Appropriations, Homeland Security Subcommittee of the United States House of Representatives. The title of his statement is The Role of FEMA and Emergency Management in COVID-19 Response. So it says, "My name is Robert Fenton. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss FEMA's role in the response to the COVID-19 pandemic. This is an unprecedented challenge. At FEMA, we are committed to advancing access and equity in the vaccination program. This is our highest priority. Their highest priority. To accomplish this goal, we are executing the President's national strategy for the COVID-19 response and pandemic preparedness. As of March the 11th, 2021, 101.1 million vaccine doses have been administered across the United States. But who's counting? FEMA is working to support SLTT-led community vaccination centers through the deployment of federal clinical and non-clinical personnel. Third, FEMA has teamed up with the Department of Defense and other agencies to establish CVC pilot sites. And CVC is the Community Vaccination Center. So it looks like they're targeting the poor people, aka underserved and historically marginalized. As of March the 12th, FEMA has obligated more than $4.28 billion for COVID-19 vaccination efforts. That is absurd. FEMA has now deployed 1,842 staff across the nation to support vaccination missions. While FEMA remains focused on supporting vaccination distribution efforts and the COVID-19 response, the agency also maintains its mission readiness. Look at that. And boy, was he ready. Bob Fenton was the BBC of the Hawaii fires. And here's another headline that relates to Robert Fenton. 66,000 plus funerals paid for under FEMA COVID program. 66,000, eh? So to me, it seems like this was a scam to drive up the COVID death count, because they would only pay for people's funerals if they could somehow get COVID put down on the death certificate. And then we all see how these deaths are used by those who want to politicize the so-called pandemic. And here's something else. This is from 2 years ago, September the 3rd, 2021. The all-of-government effort to support vulnerable Afghans as they safely resettle in the United States. I find it very concerning that Biden, or rather whoever's controlling Biden, trusts this Bob Fenton so much. And so why was he in Hawaii for a FEMA conference with many of the people who were supposed to be responding in real time to this fire? And then to make the story even crazier, Biden reassigns Fenton from monkeypox coordinator to being FEMA's incident commander for the Maui fires. There's something very, very wrong going on in Maui.
Right now, people, we are working to find out how we can make sure it's safe as we go through hurricane season, as we deal with the reality that there are going to be fires month in and month out for the decades to come, and not just in Hawaii, but all across the country. So we view this as a way to learn and to share, in this case from our tragedy,